Good day, everyone. I thought I would do a species spotlight today on the red Empress cichlid, hailing from Lake Malawi in Africa. So before I get started, I also have 4 female convicts in this tank because it's the only place that they don't bully other fish. And there's also one living stone I have in here. The parents, the father and the mother of all of these fish, just about it. These are adolescents. The parents are also in the tank. That blue one down on the left is the father, and the mother looks very similar to her offspring. I think that's her also down on the left. In any case, these fish are a mouth brooder. The female will lay her eggs and scoop them up in her mouth, and the male fertilizes, and she picks up the milk in her mouth, and then the eggs get fertilized, and she holds them in her mouth for 21 to 28 days, and then she spits them out. Currently, as far as I can tell, I have no females in this tank holding. There are a few of the male adolescents who have colored up quite nicely, others not so much. They are all of the adolescents are the same age. They're from the same spawning. They get to 4.5 to 6 inches. In the wild, usually they max out at 6 inches. In the aquarium hobby, they tend to stay on the lower end of that length scale. These adolescents are by no means grown. The hap is the longest fish in the tank, and the father follows right behind him. That's the bright blue boy you see right there. These are spectacular fish. They're very active. They're always doing something. And I can make them, I can actually make them act silly because the movement, they're used to being fed, of course, and any movement near the tank tends to make them all scurry to whichever side of the tank I may be on. I'll do that in a minute, but for now, I just want to let you enjoy them while I tell you about them. The red Empress is known for its spectacular coloring, the male in particular. The females not so much. They tend to stay pretty much on the silvery side, and the males color up blue with some striping and sometimes some oval coloration. The head's normally the bluest part, and the back part of the fish will be similar to a rainbow, and they vary in color: blue, gold, orange, and their most spectacular dress. Now, these are the traditional red Empress. There are other variants that have been bred to show more color, more vibrant color, more deeper blues. But of course the females are really not going to get that kind of color. There you can see those female convicts. What's really interesting to watch is female convicts are basically hussies, and they flirt with that male all the time, and it's just funny because he's just showing no interest in them whatsoever, but that doesn't stop them from trying. They have different breeding styles where the South American, Central American, all the American cichlids, as far as I know, are layers where they lay their eggs and then the male passes over them and fertilizes them. whereas the African cichlids tend to be mouth brooders. It's still interesting to watch the activity. There's really basically one main interest of these fish, and that is food. And every time you feed them, they will eat. So if you're going to feed them several times a day, give them small amounts. This tank is grossly overstocked. It is a 75-gallon. They've been growing up in this tank for about 3 months. However, they were born before that, and I had to let them get to an appropriate size before I introduced them as a colony to this tank. And the female convicts were introduced much later, because every tank I tried them in, they were fin nipping and chasing and just really giving the other fish in the tank a hard time. So since I put them in here, there hasn't been that issue. I suspect that hap, that livingstone eye hap, is a female, because in the wild, typically the hap will kill the male red empress to breed with the females. And this one has not shown any aggression towards the males in the tank at all. So I don't think that is going to be an issue here. I do believe that it's a female. I have not vented it, but that's just my suspicion. These fish have beautiful finnage. Let me see if I can get them to act silly, because they really do. They're really amazing when it comes to any movement outside the tank. Let me see if I can get them to play for me. And all I have to do is wave my hand, and they will follow it. And that's what they do. They suspect that possibly they will be getting some food, but they have already been fed. But like I said, they will eat anytime you feed them. They're pretty easy to care for. They're very hardy fish. They live 7 to 10 years, typically, with proper care and feeding. Because this tank is grossly overstocked, I change the water in this tank every couple of days to make sure that we don't have any sort of soiled water that might cause them some health issues. They do like some agitation on the water, so there is a pump in there with an aerator, and their filtration consists of a hang on the back filter and also 2 sponge filters. So that does help to keep the tank quite clean. Their filtration, the sponge filters are they're alternately cleaned. I'll take one out 1 week and set it back in the tank, maintaining the beneficial bacteria, and the other sponge filter gets cleaned 2 weeks later. So I alternate cleaning the sponge filters. As far as the hang on back is concerned, it's not just for agitation in the water, it's also for filtration. And the filters in the hang on back typically get cleaned out every time, not about once a week. I take the filtration out and rinse it quite well in the water, in the tank water that I'm cleaning out of the tank, and put the filter back into, it's usually a sponge, and sometimes I use on one side of the filter, because it has 2 compartments, I use sponge on one side, and I use fiber fill on the other side. In any case, that does get cleaned about once a week and put back in to maintain the beneficial bacteria, but to clean out any debris that gets caught in the filter. So there's the water pump up there. I also have a filter attached to it at the bottom, and it adds agitation and oxygen to the water. Typically these fish like some movement in the water. In the wild, they live on the edge of rocks and sand. So pretty much close to the banks of the lake where the rocks are, where they can also go and feed in the sand. They sift through the sand constantly, looking for any particles or crustaceans or whatever might be available to eat. Even if they've been fed, they do that all day long. So these adolescents, there's about 40 of them. I am going to trade this colony. I'm going to relinquish this colony to our local fish store and hope they will trade some frozen foods to me for them. It would be nice if they would. I haven't actually spoken to them yet. I have to have transportation in order to get them there, and my vehicle is still in the shop getting fixed. So I thought I would share this with you today, this species spotlight on this Lake Malawi red Empress cichlid. There is a scientific name for it, but if I try to say it, I'm going to mess it up terribly. If you Google red Empress, you can read all about it if you're interested in this species for your own hobby. They are a very interesting fish, and the males, of course, do show some beautiful colors. I thank you for tuning in today and watching my video. I hope this has been informative for you. They tell us not to mix African cichlids with American cichlids, but I have found that these female convicts in the tank get along quite well, and they really don't have too much aggression with the African cichlids, nor do the African cichlids have aggression towards them. I don't have any issues in this tank, and I think part of that is because of the numbers. These particular cichlids, they don't actually destroy any plants that you might have in your tank. They are one of the cichlids that don't. I have artificial plants because I just can't be bothered with real ones. It is a lot of maintenance, extra maintenance to put real plants in, maybe at some stage. But at this stage, they seem to be quite happy with what they have. You would normally supply them with plants and rocks. They do like to have a place to hide if there's any threat that they feel they need to duck away out of sight. But all of these fish are pretty happy and non-aggressive towards one another, so in any case, that's just for general knowledge. That is quite a few fish for one tank. And as they grow larger, if I were to keep them all, I would have to accommodate them with a larger tank. But at this stage, they're fine. Water changes are 2 to 3 days to make sure they have good water quality. They do have the same sort of propensity to get sick like other freshwater aquarium fish. But if you maintain their water quality and give them good food, they're normally pretty hardy. And none of these fish in this tank have ever been sick, have never had any parasitic issues or fungus issues. So I'm quite happy with it. As long as I maintain my water, they seem to be quite happy with. There's one of the babies who's all colored up nice. That's a boy. There is one other one. He's not colored up as well, but I expect that the boys will be coloring up soon as they mature. And as they mature, depending on how many males, there's going to have to be a separation. So this is why I've decided to take this colony to the local fish store, hopefully soon. and utilize this tank for some of the other species that I have that are going to need to be accommodated with a larger tank than they're in right now, like my Vieja. I'm going to move into this tank, and I will be getting rid of all of the convicts, the males and the females. And I will be moving some things around to make sure that all of my Jack Dempsey have their own larger tanks as well. Right now, being that they're not grown, but they will be larger, they will need larger tanks than they are currently in. So yeah, some changes are going to be made as time goes by, and I'll keep you updated. And I hope you enjoyed this video, species specific to the Red Empress African cichlid. Thank you for watching. Have a beautiful evening, day, whatever it is in your part of the world that you're watching from. And I'm just going to give you a few minutes to watch these fish.